George Miller's runaway hit, Mad Max Fury Road, not only shook up the world of the action genre in spectacular fashion, but brought to the forefront issues of feminist ideology and the role of women in action movies. In Fury Road, we found parallels with a much less high-profile, but stylistically resonant film from 1971 called Duel. While Fury Road is the work of an experienced and wizened master director revisiting his own cinematic legacy, Duel was an early effort by then young upstart director Steven Spielberg. Both films center upon long-drawn, high-speed chases across vast stretches of desert, in which the hero or heroes are pursued by a malevolent, wheeled menace. Through their respective narratives and direction, we believe both films use their premises to comment on the concept of masculinity in the action genre, albeit in very different ways. In both Duel and Mad Max Fury Road, filmic masculinity is shown to be performative, that is to say, denoted by the performance of particular acts. Masculinity is a spectacle, a show to be put on by the players of the piece. This performance consists of two facets: the iconography that denotes manliness, and the actions we associate with masculinity. In Duel, our protagonist is David Mann. Yep, David Mann. He's a middle-class husband and office worker who travels out of the urban sprawl and unwittingly enters into a deadly game of cat and mouse with a massive tanker truck, who seems hell-bent on running him down at any cost. In the early scenes of the film, David is quickly revealed to be a whiny, petulant, meek and timid person who shrinks at the idea of confrontation, even once it's revealed that his wife was sexually harassed by a male neighbor.
It means that you think that I should go out and call Steve Henderson up and challenge him to a fist fight or something.
No, of course not. But, I think you could have at least said something to the man last night. After all, he was practically trying to rape me in front of that whole party.
The faceless truck driver who confronts him can then be viewed as a physical manifestation of David's anxiety, embodying the traits of masculinity he fails to possess. Those traits, as expressed by the film, operate on the levels of aesthetic iconography, as well as masculine action. The iconography of masculinity in Duel is specifically that of the Old West, as the film alludes to classic Hollywood westerns and gunslingers through the cowboy boots worn by the driver of the truck, and by the frontier setting, which seems to move further back in time the further David drives. As David is gradually distanced from urban civility, he becomes increasingly isolated in the frontier setting, where societal institutions and safeguards are no longer any protection. He cannot outrun his adversary, nor can he wait him out, or reason with him socially. The essence of masculinity is therefore distilled down to its symbolic iconography, the red compact car versus the truck. In this competition of theatrical masculinity, David finds himself completely outmatched, the truck outdoing his domestic automobile in speed, power, and endurance, and outperforming him in manly feats. When David comes across a stranded school bus, his meager vehicle lacks the power to push it free, while the truck performs the deed with ease, humiliating and emasculating David with a showing of manly prowess that evokes both sexual and social dominance. The truck in this case represents the traditional man who is sexually potent, a paternal progenitor, and a pillar of the community. David's insecurities are further illustrated in a scene where he stops at a local bar to collect himself after a terrifying run-in with the truck. While the men at the bar embody the old Western ideals of masculinity, David is sat at a pink-colored booth decorated with floral patterns where he orders a cheese sandwich and an aspirin for his aching neck. From his infantile food order to the way the waitress mothers him, David is failing utterly to perform up to the standards of traditional manliness. Unlike the stoic patrons at the bar, David's anxieties can't be suppressed and come to the surface as he babbles nervously to himself, trying to figure a way out of his predicament.
He's got some souped up diesel. My car's just not that powerful. I just can't drive 80 and 90 miles an hour.
When his fear finally overwhelms him, he confronts a patron of the bar and cowers the moment the conflict becomes physical. David thus not only fails to look the part of the traditional male, but also fails to perform when it comes to violent action. Only once he is pushed to his very limits, his hollow bravado and attempted civility proven futile in the face of such raw masculinity, does David finally rise to take violent action. Propping the gas pedal of his car down with his briefcase, he sends his vehicle headlong into the oncoming truck. David takes the symbols that define him as a man, his car and his job, and projects them violently into the representation of traditional masculinity. By discarding these icons that are so often used to codify men in action films, man is reborn, free to reinvent himself and move into a future where the role of men is changing. But how does this relate to Mad Max Fury Road? Besides using a massive truck as a centerpiece for the plot, Fury Road touches on similar ideas as Duel regarding the aesthetics of masculine action. We are introduced to a hyper-masculine world which, like Duel's emulation of the Old West, has regressed into antiquated forms of traditional masculinity, embracing elements of Viking culture, along with an infatuation with death, martyrdom, and the afterlife. Masculinity is expressed visually through adornment and flamboyant decoration of the men's vehicles and their bodies. This iconography labels the war boys and their leaders as members of the patriarchal order, under the command of Immortan Joe. Where Fury Road differs significantly from Duel is in its choice of central character. Charlize Theron's Furiosa, a woman, is presented as a high-ranking figure in Immortan's army. She has earned power and respect through her skill in driving the war rig, this traditionally male ability endowing her with a measure of status in the male-dominated world in which she lives. Masculinity as the film presents it is therefore not actually about gender, but about the performance of that gender. With her short hair and rugged appearance, Furiosa looks the part of a man, and performs the actions normally associated with male characters in the action genre. She's a dead-eye shooter, a vocal leader, a skilled driver, and a tenacious fighter. These traits garner her acceptance in the world of men, unlike the other brides, who are objectified and viewed as property. Furiosa can therefore be seen not only as hijacking the war rig with the women inside, but as hijacking the action genre itself, using codes and signifiers that are typically associated with the male-oriented genre to smuggle a feminist ideology to the audience. Though she acts the part of a man, both in the world of the film and in the broader context of the action genre, she is still a woman, trying to provide a voice to female issues within a context that is traditionally the domain of men. So while in Spielberg's film, David is a man who struggles to live up to the traditional paradigm of manliness, in Mad Max, Furiosa is a woman who performs masculinity in order to subvert the patriarchal order. In both films, the truck embodies the essence of masculinity, as a symbol of aggression and phallic potency. In Duel, David flees from this symbol, while in Fury Road, Furiosa hijacks it in order to undermine its power. But what about Max himself, the character for whom the film is named? Is Max like David Mann, daunted by the might of overpowering machismo? Or is he more like Furiosa, usurping masculine codes to further an ulterior cause? Well, it's neither and both. In our view, Max is most like David Mann at the end of his journey in Duel. He's a man stripped of the superficial signifiers and icons that define him as such. Though he is masculine, and particularly at the beginning of the film, animalistic in his behavior, he is not hyper-masculine, nor is he insecure about his identity as a man. He puts a phallic hose in his mouth and frantically saws at his muzzle in what could be seen as a masturbatory fashion. While this might seem like an overzealous stretch of the imagination, these are not actions normally performed by male action stars, who are usually carefully and explicitly coded as heterosexual through their actions. This is not to say that Max is implied to be anything other than straight in the film, but rather that there is no explicit effort made to cement his status as a potent, womanizing man. He never says or does anything to suggest he has sexual desire for Furiosa, nor for any of the brides. His eventual bond with Furiosa is suggested to be formed through mutual respect and admiration, rather than heterosexual attraction. Just as Max's sexual masculinity is never overtly expressed, his violent actions are also non-performative. The only scene where Max single-handedly takes aggressive action against his enemies takes place off-screen and is not seen by the audience. His masculine act of violence is thus non-performative in the context of the film itself, as the action of the action genre is denied to the viewer when committed by the film's titular male hero. Like David at the end of Duel, Max's singular instinct to survive drives him to discard all the trappings of his genderized past, in which it is suggested he has failed as a father and a protector, to construct a new identity of masculinity, one that is codependent and reliant upon femininity as its equal partner. In this way, both Duel and Mad Max Fury Road question the place of traditional gender norms in Hollywood films. They allude to the need for a renewed and modern reinvention of the cinematic action hero.